We've now had more than a few weeks to look at what's been happening with sports in the bubble and how it's being presented. What, if anything, have we seen that we would say, you know what, when sports comes back normally, they should adopt that? Let's dive down that rabbit hole. There is always something, whenever sports changes in some kind of way, a new league starts, whatever, there's always something that they stumble on that we then say, how did that not happen before? How was that not a thing before now? How had nobody thought of that before now? Well, Steve Milton, we now get to see basketball in the bubble, hockey in the bubble, baseball to some degree in the bubble. What have we seen, if anything, that you say, how was that not a thing before?
Well, guys, I've been surprised a little bit that there hasn't been this major technological advancement. I was expecting something bigger there, so I haven't seen a lot that way. I think that lower right camera that they use in basketball along the baseline a little more, that they're using it a little more, and I like that a little bit. But one thing that it's taken me a long time to get used to, and I'm still not fully used to it, but I like it. And that's really hearing. I'm talking about really hearing the players. Mm-hmm. It's particularly obvious in baseball and soccer. And if they can find a way to keep that, now I know they mic along the boards in hockey and that kind of thing, but there's a certain reality to that I'm really becoming much more accustomed to, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to like it when they go back to just more of an overriding fan noise or more of an overriding sound from the booth. I'd love to see them find a way to have that sound just be as loud and distinct with all of the other ambient sounds that will come if and when we ever return. That's one thing I'd really like to see.
And it would mean, Steve, it would mean a new job for somebody in the broadcasting world.
Bleep job.
Have at least one censor guy with his finger on the button just in case.
I don't know. I think that's what I'm about to say here, is that I think we're going to have another couple of months of this yet, and we don't know where the NFL will go. So they're so hypocritically Puritan that they may get back to. But we're hearing stuff now and close to it. So I think we're going to be a little inured to that by then. I think that's going to be one of the changes.
Rick?
I think the open mic is fantastic. I know we've had NFL Films kind of pioneered that, player wearing the mics. This one, goes to a different degree in which you can hear every player. That really comes down to cost in terms of, miking players. And if there is fans back in the stands, you won't really hear a lot of that because that kind of drowns it out. But the one thing that I have really enjoyed is the day games, whether it's hockey or basketball. I mean, we're kind of used to that in baseball and certainly football on the weekends. But watching hockey at 3 p.m, that's fantastic. Watching a basketball game at 4 p.m. during the week, it's fantastic. And it kind of lends to where we are in society with many people still kind of working from home. But if they can find a way to continue to do that and draw TV ratings, that's going to be a winner both on and off the ice.
Have we not seen, Bubba, let me just jump in for 1 sec about this point, because have we not seen success with this before? I mean, March Madness has been doing this in basketball forever, where you start the games at noon.
Yeah.
People make a point of watching it. And as I've been watching, I've been feeling, now it's less now, of course, because we've got fewer teams as we move along, but especially with hockey, it had that March Madness kind of feeling to it, where you turn on the TV all day.
But this is a tournament. This is like March Madness. All of these things are essentially tournaments right now. Would it sustain over a longer period?
And it would be very difficult to do it when you've got teams not necessarily in a bubble. So you have to tell a team you're going to start at noon and you're going to start at 3 in your own cities. I mean, look, I understand the challenges. I just loved, as Rick says, and that was the thing I would say. I love that. Let's not overlap all the games, so you have to pick and choose which one you want to watch. Let's throw them all in there one after the other. Bubba.
Kind of an East Coast bias thinking, guys, that we're coming off there with I don't know how much people in the West Coast want to see their games being played at that time of day. And I get it. I think it is interesting because we're basically getting sports from 12 noon all the way to as much as 2 in the morning. That's the way this has been working out with the playoffs going on in the National Hockey League and, of course, the NBA. So I just don't know if that's a real feasible thing that we can actually do in having games played throughout those hours. Overall, though, guys, I mean, I know, Steve, you talked about the crowd noise option, and then DAZN, if you've noticed, does give you that option when you select a game, Champions League game, fan noise, or just not sound. So that's an interesting, I guess, innovation that you actually have choice as a consumer, because you do have to pay for that service. But I'll be honest with you guys, overall, nothing. There's nothing that's happened so far over the bubble that I can't care about. I miss fans. I miss real fans. I miss fan shots. I don't need to see cardboard cutouts. I know the TV stations, I think, have done a brilliant job, because there's lots of times I'm watching games where I sometimes almost feel like there is a crowd there and they're doing a good job on the audio, and the announcers are still very much into the broadcast. But overall, they're doing a wonderful job with making the bubble experience feel as close to the real thing as possible. But I miss the real thing.
I do too, what would you say, Bub, are the ones that have done the better jobs on that? I've grown. I like the way that baseball's doing it, and hockey seems to have the timing down fairly well. And I don't mean just the timing, but the modulation. Baseball increasingly has a good modulation there. Like they don't go. It wasn't just yay when something good's happened and silence when there's a whole bunch of ranges in between.
Well, it depends on your sound guy. I thought we're speaking here on Wednesday, and whoever did the Blue Jays game on Sportsnet on Tuesday wasn't as good as the other. There's a lot of times the crowd actually sounded fake, like the way it kind of came in and came out. And even in the beginning of that fan noise innovation, sometimes it was rough. I think they're getting better at it. I feel like it's better in the NBA games more so than than hockey and in baseball. What I think is also a cool innovation, I guess, in some ways, is that it helps in hockey because each team, after they score, are using their particular goal horn from their own stadium, and that gives it a little bit of life as well too. But I mean, imagine what that feels like in the stadium, though. It must feel very, very, very empty because you're not getting that crowd noise if you're at the actual venue.
The goal horn thing, I'll be honest. I mean, I've coached kids hockey for years. It sounds like going to a kids hockey tournament when both teams are the home team, so the horn goes off no matter who scores. There's no real home ice advantage. One other thing, and this of course means nothing to anybody, but I picked this up. Somebody mentioned it, and I saw it. Didn't realize it in hockey. They are changing the ads on the boards depending on who the home team is. So if Columbus was playing Toronto and it was a Columbus home game, it was the ads from the Columbus rink, not the Maple Leafs rink that was on the board. It's an advertising thing. It's revenue for the league, but it's these little things that I didn't even notice until someone pointed it out.
Yeah, I thought there would be a lot more off-field or off-ice advertising. We haven't really seen a ton of that. And maybe if this continues, we will see that because networks are going to have to make their money somehow, and teams will probably, have their hand in that too with no fans in the stands. But, it's almost, well, it is impossible for networks to replicate the real feeling that you get from the fans in the stands because we've all been to live sporting events. It's the energy that we feel and then kind of feed off to the athletes on what is happening or what's transpiring on the field or the ice or the court. So it's never going to be what we once felt, and hopefully we can feel that again someday. But here's a question for you guys. No one has mentioned 7-inning doubleheaders. Yay or nay?
I grew up with that. I grew up with this because in the old baseball was really big AAA in Toronto in my time growing up before it left in '69. The Expos came into Montreal and sort of superseded everything that way. But because of the Sunday Blue laws, they used to have a 9-inning first game and a 7-inning second game. And I kind of like that. I don't like 2 sevens. Now, it makes sense in this tournament because how many arms are getting blown out here?
Yeah.
I mean, 3 of the Jays' projected 6 starters are down. And that's just them. There's all the Yankees Boston's a mess. Everybody is losing pitchers that way. I think eventually it could be that, but there aren't very many doubleheaders normally. They'll go miles out of their way during a regular season under regular conditions not to have doubleheaders. It's shocking how they, because they'll rather have a morning, nights, and especially in the bigger cities where they have a greater percentage of higher sales and they can't accommodate to you to come to the next game. So I don't think we're going to see too many doubleheaders in the future, but it does speak to something else. We don't know what the time lag here between hockey and baseball is going to be when they finish this season and go towards the next one. But hockey and basketball, because they're fall winter sports. So if it's a fairly short time period, how much of this now are the things we're talking about? Hey, they didn't do this, they didn't do that. Might they be working on, knowing that likely when they start again, it's going to be some similar situation to this?
Oh, surely there's going to be a post-mortem of some kind. And by the way, Steve, I meant to ask you, how was Babe Ruth's first home run at Hanlon's Point?
Well, it went right. It was a long way. It almost went it almost hit a little biplane.
But no, there is obviously going to be a post-mortem on this. And I go to, I'll agree with Bubba to some degree on this one. I expected, because we've talked about this before on this spot, when the XFL started the first time, they basically allowed the TV network to do whatever it wanted, try something. And there were things that were discovered, the overhead cam and the guy running on the field with the steady cam and other things the NFL or CFL had never done that now have become just part of what we expect to see. I really thought we were going to see some innovation, some experimentation, some things that even for a week or two, they try it and they go, you know what, no, that's not. And maybe the one that I saw, and it was in hockey. Steve, you mentioned the baseline camera in the NBA, which I think works, except I don't know how you do that when you finally get fans back in. Jack Nicholson tripped and break his hip. But in hockey, they tried for the power play a higher overhead shot.
Yeah.
And I didn't love it. And maybe that's, like it was distracting. It was new. And so maybe that's why it's not happening, because enough people said, you haven't found the thing yet that really works.
And it's funny, they're using that camera angle in both Rogers Place and Scotiabank Arena. And it almost, we're so not used to seeing that look. And because we see so many games with the Maple Leafs, that it almost gives you a feel that it's not at Scotiabank Arena. It's kind of a different feel. I think the is it the craziest or maybe the most obvious thing that I've seen is on the One Soccer CHCH CPL games of the week, that sort of fake stadium that they're doing. That may be the craziest thing I think I've seen. And there are parts of it while the game is going on where I actually believe that it's in a stadium. And then sometimes it looks incredibly fake.
It's the
working on that.
Newsroom Studio Stadium.
Yeah. Well, the One Soccer's thrown way more money into this than I had anticipated. A lot more cameras there. They have a lot less AI than I had anticipated. They see this as an investment. They see this as I haven't heard this from them, but you can see what they're doing. That they see this as a time to kind of learn stuff. It's like back in the old days, Conrad Black used to buy up newspapers in bad times because they were cheap and then turn them into something. Well, that may be what One Soccer's doing with this thing. Rather than saying, how can we do something to get by? Let's try all these different things that Bub just mentioned. And I got to respect them for that. But one thing I've noticed with the soccer, and I think this goes back to the hearing the voices type thing. First of all, whoever said that, it must be weird in the arena. I think, was it you, Scott? It has to be. But we'll look at the focus on those athletes now. They've got used to that. Tells you something about professional athletes and their ability to focus, because it's got to be bizarre. It's a ghosting type of thing. But the second thing is hearing all of those voices, particularly I've noticed in the soccer and basketball, it is right there too. How much they care. How much they care about everything that goes on in a dirty swearing, like this is the moment kind of way. And that's why I think we need to hear more about that, because you can look at players and think, oh, they gave up on that play. And you realize listening is a whole different story.
Did we
really
talk about
paints
this?
the picture of, we've heard this before. I was going to say, we've heard this from athletes over many generations now, that they're so locked in, they don't even hear the crowd. And so, what kind of impact has it had? Maybe not as big as we might think. It might be a minuscule impact to say, after a goal, they don't really hear what they usually hear. But once the play is underway, the ball is tipped off or the puck is dropped, they're obviously honed into their job.
The communication too between them is that's I think what I was trying to get at too, Rick. Like it's particularly in soccer, which maybe because I don't know it that well, how much they talk about hey, get that ball here and that kind of thing. That's really interesting.
The one place that I would bet, and I'd love to see someone do the numbers on this, that I bet this is having an effect, is on officiating. Because if you don't have the crowd that lets out a giant roar when someone gets tripped or boos heartily at a call that the ref then figures I got to make it up, I would bet you money that the refereeing, that the numbers, if you look, are somehow different as far as number of calls or the kinds of calls or things like that that are being made. Because look, officials are human beings. They're good at their job. They try to be objective and dispassionate, but you know, you're aware of stuff. And if you suddenly hear the crowd roar because something happened behind you, you don't have that anymore. So that's something that I would be really interested in seeing.
Those stats are out on the EPL, I think, on British Soccer. I think they were out, and the number of home calls declined because they were so out of whack during the regular time, given what soccer people are. The number of home calls has declined. I don't remember what the percentages were.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
To your point, Steve, I know you were saying that, you know, that again, that maybe an important part is hearing more crowd noise. We're talking about soccer right here. Let's talk about the players speaking with each other. You're actually hearing the coaches communicating with the players on the field, which is one sport that, you know, because you just can't do that in hockey and basketball. You're hearing like a call being shouted out by the coaches, but in soccer, the coaches are actually speaking to the actual players. Some are a little bit more lippy than others, but maybe, you know, that's up to, maybe when we get back to normal, whenever that is, that will be up to producers and executive producers when they're hiring their talent. You know, guys like Rick and I who have called games in the past before, that maybe we speak less. I always remember the late Charlie Jones in the National Football League. Whenever a touchdown was scored, he would say touchdown, and there would be silence. But the crowd was so into the game that his silence, I thought, made the game more exciting in some ways, or made that play or that touchdown more exciting. So maybe it's incumbent upon broadcasters to allow that ambient noise from the players to become more of the broadcast. And as the old saying goes, sometimes less more, and less speaking is better than more speaking.
That's a great point.
The other thing, and we may have talked about this on here before, I can't remember, but Sportsnet has 6 channels. TSN has 5 or 6 channels. I'm not sure. I don't know what the RTC regulations are on this, but it's always surprised me that you couldn't have one game on 2 different channels with 2 different audio feeds, where one you say we're going to have the players mic'd, and you put a little warning like at the beginning of coming out of every UFC commercial where it says this could have bad language or violence, where you don't have a warning that says you may hear bad words. Don't complain. This is the bad word channel. This is the live mic channel. And you could tune into that one, that TSN whatever, or Sportsnet, I guess it's hockey, and you could hear the live players feed. And then if you don't want that, if the kids are in the room or whatever, you can just play the standard one. I've not understood. Now, maybe there are CRTC rules that would say you still can't do that even if you put a warning. But to me, that seems like you could do all kinds of things. You could have one with no announcers at all. Just watch the game if you want to do that. But
Scott, that was what I was saying about the Champions League final this weekend, is that DAZN gave you that option.
Yes. Yeah.
Stadium. I think it was called Stadium, or I think they call it Stadium and Regular. So you had a choice. Now, again, that's a paid service. So to your point there, with the Sportsnet and TSN being more of a public broadcaster in a sense, maybe that option might not be there. But because you pay $20 a month in DAZN, that they can offer that option.
And there's all kinds of options on streaming, and we're heading streaming way. You know, it's going to be, you know, the standard model of this is, especially if this lasts much longer, it's going to, the change to streaming, and they've got to have income source. So the change away from sort of appointment television, well, it's going to be appointment because they're games, but available to everybody for a modest price, that's going to change. It's absolutely going to change, and this is hastening it. And those things you're talking about, Scott, will all be part of this, because you've got to take the most money from probably fewer people if you're not going mass audiences who just watch it because it's something on. Do you think the times of zone, we talked earlier about going all day, but do you think that even within a time zone, like a local game, I'm kind of interested, like, is primetime changing? You know, games not starting at 9 o'clock or something. I mean, the 6 o'clock, 6:30 starts, is it sometimes for those baseball ones? You watch it with the kids. Right. Okay. Now, once we're back to quote unquote normal, a lot of kids that are interested in sports are going out and playing sports, right after the dinner hour or through the dinner hour. But do you think the prime time, as far as sports, particularly local markets, might change a little bit?
Whatever draws the audience, whatever the audience is willing to come, that's what they'll do it. I could see that you were dying to jump in on something there just a moment ago, though, about the various TV things and the different channels and the streaming.
I think for me, one of the biggest missed opportunities right now, and we were kind of hearing about this going into the bubble situation, is that networks or leagues were going to take advantage of their social media platforms to get the viewers or listeners involved in the action. So whether it's, hey, what do you think about the Pittsburgh Penguins power play this series, or vote for your player of the game, which kind of goes hand in hand from time to time on some networks that they do that. But I thought there was going to be a lot more social interaction during broadcasts, and we haven't seen that. I think it's a big missed opportunity.
Here, one more thing, Steve, just to your point, and I think it's a great one about the streaming and about how things are going to change in revenue sources. Look at what Disney Plus, Disney, if there's ever a company that knows how to make money and separate people from their money, it's Disney. They do it better than almost anyone. They've got their streaming service. But because of the way things are going, they're releasing Mulan, their new live action movie, but they're putting it onto their streaming service. So you can just still have that. But if you want this movie at this time, now there's going to be a premium price on top of that. And I can absolutely, to your point, Steve, see, the Leaf games are still on TV, but if you want the extra, now you pay for the streaming option, the streaming extra. You want this or that or the other. You want more in-depth stuff. You're right. The longer this thing goes on, the more they are going to be becoming desperate to find more revenue streams, and the more there's going to be new things that maybe all the stuff that we're talking about right now all get thrown into the blender, and a million more things that they come up with. What do you think? What have you liked in the bubble or disliked in the bubble? What have you been disappointed they haven't done or amazed they have done? We'd love to hear from you. Our Twitter handles have been on the screen. They'll be up again at the end. You can reach out to us. We also would hope that you would subscribe down below. We'd love it if you would, so you get these videos all the time. Hit the notification bell as well so you're reminded. We thank you for watching. We'll talk to you again soon.